They broke her statues, buried her name, and built over her tomb. But Hatshepsut's truth refused to stay silent. Beneath the desert sands of Luxor, something amazing was found. More than 1,000 beautiful stone blocks were scattered and broken across the ground. These stones didn't belong to any ordinary building. They were the pieces of a powerful temple, once built for a ruler whose name had been scratched off history. A ruler so important that someone had worked very hard to erase her completely. Her name was Hatshepsut. For many years no one knew she even existed. But now her story is coming back stronger than ever. Hatshepsut was one of the few women in ancient Egypt who became a pharaoh. This alone made her special. Egypt's rulers were almost always men. In fact, only 4 women in all of ancient Egypt's history ever became pharaohs. After Hatshepsut, it would take over 1,500 years before another woman, Cleopatra, would rise to the same power. But Hatshepsut wasn't just a queen who ruled because her husband died. She declared herself pharaoh and ruled like a king. She lived during Egypt's 18th dynasty, over 3,400 years ago, around 1479 BC. This was Egypt's golden age, when the empire was huge and powerful. Her father was Pharaoh Thutmose I, a strong military leader who had made Egypt bigger and richer. He had no sons with his main wife, so his daughter Hatshepsut was royal by birth. She carried the pure blood of the gods. But women couldn't rule on their own, no matter how royal they were. So Hatshepsut was married to her half-brother Thutmose II to keep the royal line going. This was normal for Egyptian royalty to keep the divine bloodline pure. Thutmose II was a weaker ruler than his father. He was often sick and didn't have the military skills that made Thutmose I great. During his short time as pharaoh, Hatshepsut learned about running the kingdom. She wasn't just a quiet royal wife. She was actively involved in ruling, appearing in ceremonies and even shown in temple pictures alongside her husband. She was learning how to be a leader. When Thutmose II died after only a few years, they had no son together. This created a big problem. His son from another wife, Thutmose III, was still a baby, maybe only 2 or 3 years old. The throne needed someone experienced to guide it. Someone who could rule one of the world's most powerful empires. At first, Hatshepsut acted as his regent, a caretaker ruler. This was a role that women had filled before in Egyptian history. She was expected to keep order until Thutmose III grew up, then step aside and let him become pharaoh. For the first few years she followed this path. In official artwork, she appeared standing behind the young king, her hands protectively on his shoulders. But over the next few years she made a bold move that shocked the ancient world. She stopped waiting for Thutmose III to grow up. Instead, she began appearing in pictures as equal to the young pharaoh, then gradually became more important than him. By the 7th year of what should have been Thutmose III's reign, she had crowned herself pharaoh. Egypt now had a female king. This was shocking at the time. Women could hold power in some ways. They could own property, run businesses, and even serve as priestesses in important temples. But being the pharaoh, the living god on earth, was a role made only for men. To keep her throne, Hatshepsut had to do more than just claim power. She had to prove she was worthy of it in the eyes of the gods, the priests and the people. The change wasn't sudden or violent. It was gradual and carefully planned. She began by taking on more and more of the pharaoh's duties. She appeared in religious ceremonies, made important decisions, and led diplomatic meetings. She surrounded herself with loyal advisors, including her architect Senenmut, who became one of her most trusted friends, and possibly more than just a work partner. She began to appear in public wearing the traditional symbols of kingship. She dressed like a man, with the royal kilt, the royal headdress, and even the fake beard used by male pharaohs. But she didn't hide that she was a woman. In her statues and carvings, the titles were mixed. She was called His Majesty, but also used feminine words. Her body was often shown with gentle feminine curves, even while wearing masculine royal clothes. This change in how she looked was more than just costume. It was a carefully planned political statement. She showed that a woman could hold power without completely giving up her identity. This was new. This was bold. And it worked for a time. Her early statues show this change clearly. In some, she appears as a traditional queen, elegant and feminine. In others, she's shown as a sphinx, with a woman's face, but a pharaoh's headdress. Her later statues show her as a fully masculine pharaoh, complete with the false beard and strong body typical of royal sculpture. Yet small details like the shape of her hands and the curve of her waist still hinted at her true identity. Still, Hatshepsut knew that looks alone wouldn't be enough. She needed the support of the people and the religious leaders who had enormous power in Egyptian society. So she created a divine story that would justify her rule. She claimed that the god Amun had visited her mother, disguised as her father, Thutmose I. In this story, she was not just royal but divine. She had been chosen by the gods to rule before her birth. This wasn't just mythology, it was ancient politics at its smartest. Pharaohs were considered gods on earth, the living form of divine will. If the people believed she had a god for a father, her right to rule couldn't be questioned. She had elaborate artwork made showing this divine conception, with scenes of Amun selecting her to be pharaoh while she was still in her mother's womb. She also changed her royal name to reflect her divine mission. She took the name Matkare, which means truth is the soul of the sun god. In ancient Egypt, Matk was the idea of balance, order and justice. It was the foundation of civilized society. By using this name, Hatshepsut was saying she brought peace and balance to Egypt. And she did. During her reign, Egypt entered a time of great peace and wealth, like never before. The religious leaders, who at first doubted a female pharaoh, gradually accepted her rule as she proved herself capable of keeping Mat. She participated in all the traditional religious ceremonies, gave generous donations to temples, and made sure the gods were properly honored. Her reign brought stability and prosperity, which the priests saw as proof of divine approval. While most kings are remembered for wars and battles, Hatshepsut is remembered for what she built. She began many large projects including temples, monuments, roads and more. Her building program was one of the most ambitious in Egyptian history, changing the landscape of Thebes and other cities throughout the empire. Her most famous creation was her temple at Deir al-Bahari, called Djeser Djesera, which means Holy of Holies. Built into the side of a mountain, it is one of the most beautiful buildings of ancient Egypt. Even today, it amazes visitors with its innovative design and harmonious structure. The temple has 3 levels connected by ramps, creating a stunning visual effect that seems to grow naturally from the cliff face. This temple was more than a building, it was a message to the world that Hatshepsut's rule was powerful and divine. Every wall was covered with scenes of her divine birth, her crowning by the gods, and her achievements as pharaoh. The temple's design was revolutionary. It abandoned the traditional enclosed, fortress-like structure of earlier royal temples for an open, airy design that welcomed visitors and displayed her accomplishments for all to see. She also built huge obelisks, tall stone pillars carved from single pieces of granite. One of them, over 320 tons and nearly 100 feet tall, still stands in Karnak Temple. These monuments were meant to last forever, to keep her name alive. Each obelisk was covered with hieroglyphic texts, praising her achievements and announcing her divine authority. The engineering required to cut, transport and raise these massive stones was extraordinary, showing the wealth and technical skill of her reign. Hatshepsut didn't only focus on buildings, she was also smart about money and trade. She understood that Egypt's wealth came not just from the Nile's fertility, but from its position as a bridge between Africa, Asia and the Mediterranean world. She sent out ships on long sea voyages, expanding Egypt's trade networks and bringing exotic goods back to enrich the kingdom. One of the most famous was her expedition to the land of Punt. Historians think Punt was located in modern Somalia, or Eritrea, a mysterious land that Egyptians called God's Land. Her ships returned with gold, incense, ebony, ivory and even exotic animals, like baboons and leopards. These goods made Egypt richer, but they also showed how far Hatshepsut could reach. Her trade mission to Punt was the first recorded journey of its kind and showed her skills as a leader who preferred business to conquest. The walls of her temple at Deir al-Bahari are covered with detailed scenes of this expedition. They show Egyptian ships sailing down the Red Sea, the exotic trees and animals of Punt, and the respectful reception given to her ambassador. Unlike many pharaohs who showed conquered enemies and military victories, Hatshepsut chose to showcase peaceful trade and diplomatic success. She also kept Egypt's military strength without fighting unnecessary war. Her army was well trained and well equipped, serving as a warning to potential enemies. She built up Egypt's borders, constructed new fortresses in Nubia, and maintained the empire's existing territories through skilled diplomacy rather than constant warfare. But behind this success, something dark was growing. Her stepson, Thutmose III, was waiting in the background. While Hatshepsut ruled, he remained in the shadows, not imprisoned or killed as might have happened in other ancient kingdoms, but carefully managed. He trained in the military, learning the arts of war and command, preparing for his own time to rule. The relationship between Hatshepsut and Thutmose III is one of the most interesting aspects of her reign. Some historians believe they ruled together for many years, with Hatshepsut handling domestic affairs and religious duties, while Thutmose III gained experience in military matters. Others suggest there was growing tension between them as Thutmose III came of age, and began to resent his stepmother's continued control. Evidence suggests that toward the end of her reign, Hatshepsut may have begun preparing for the change of power. Some of her later writings mention Thutmose III more prominently, and there are hints that she was training him to take over the full responsibilities of pharaoh. Whether this was voluntary or forced remains a mystery. When Hatshepsut died around 1458 BCE, after ruling for about 22 years, Thutmose III finally became the sole pharaoh of Egypt. But he didn't just take over. He began to systematically destroy her legacy. He ordered her name removed from walls and monuments. Statues were broken or changed to show male pharaohs. Writings were scratched out with careful precision. It was a clear message: erase her memory from history. Why did he do it? Some believe Thutmose III wanted to claim all credit for Egypt's golden age, presenting himself as the sole creator of the empire's prosperity. Others think later rulers couldn't accept the idea of a woman king, viewing her reign as an embarrassment to those who wanted men to stay in power. The destruction wasn't random, it was careful, systematic and widespread. The erasure took place in multiple phases. Initially, Thutmose III might have simply wanted to establish his own legitimacy by minimizing her role, but later pharaohs, particularly those of the 19th dynasty, seem to have been more systematic in their destruction of her memory. They viewed her reign as a mistake that needed to be corrected in the historical record. Interestingly, the erasure wasn't always complete. In some cases, her name was simply replaced with those of Thutmose I, Thutmose II, or Thutmose III. In others, her feminine pronouns were changed to masculine ones. This suggests that even her enemies recognized her achievements were too significant to completely ignore. They just couldn't accept that a woman had accomplished them. For nearly 3,000 years, Hatshepsut was forgotten. Her name was missing from the official list of kings. Her achievements were given to other ancient historians like Manetho, who wrote the first comprehensive history of Egyptian pharaohs, made no mention of her. It wasn't until the 19th century that archaeologists began to discover the truth. They found statues with chiseled faces, clearly altered to remove feminine features. Temples with missing names where the hieroglyphs had been carefully gouged out. Slowly they realized there had been a powerful woman whose story had been deliberately buried. The breakthrough came when archaeologists began finding writings that mentioned a mysterious pharaoh called Mot-Kari alongside evidence of feminine pronouns and titles. In 1903, a tomb labeled KV60 was found in the Valley of the Kings. Inside were two mummies, one was identified as Sutri-Yin, her royal nurse. The other had no name, lying in a simple wooden coffin without the elaborate burial goods typical of royal mummies. For over a century this anonymous mummy remained unidentified. In 2007, scientists made a breakthrough. Using a missing tooth found in a canopic jar inscribed with Hatshepsut's name, they used CT scans and dental analysis,
to prove the identified body was indeed Hatshepsut. The tooth fit perfectly into a gap in the mummy's jaw, providing concrete proof of her identity. The discovery revealed fascinating details about her death. She had been in her 40s when she died, suffering from diabetes, arthritis, and possibly bone cancer. Her teeth showed evidence of a poor diet in her final years, suggesting she may have been ill for some time before her death. She had been hidden in another woman's tomb, possibly to protect her from the destruction that would later happen to her monuments. Then came another surprise. In 2017, in the royal burial site of Dashur, archaeologists found a small sealed pyramid. Most pyramids in the area had already been robbed, but this one appeared untouched. When they opened it, they discovered the tomb had already been disturbed long ago. Items were broken, scattered, and clearly stolen. But in the middle there was a on it the name Princess Hatshepsut was still visible. Was it the same Hatshepsut? No, it belonged to another royal woman from an earlier dynasty, raising interesting questions about the name's significance. Why had this grave been attacked before being sealed again? Why was there so little record of this other Hatshepsut? Could there have been more women like her, whose stories were erased from history? Some researchers now believe that ancient Egypt had more powerful women than we know, and that many of their stories were systematically covered up by later male-dominated dynasties. The discovery of this earlier Hatshepsut suggests that the name itself might have been associated with female power, making it a target for those who wanted to erase women from positions of authority. In recent years, more parts of Hatshepsut's life have come back to life. In 2023, scientists used satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar to look beneath modern buildings near Deir el-Bahar. They found signs of more structures, possibly linked to Hatshepsut's temple complex. Plans are underway to study and preserve what remains. Using modern 3D scanning and virtual reality, researchers are digitally rebuilding her temple, showing how it looked when it was new. These virtual reconstructions reveal the temple's original colors, brilliant blues, golds and reds, that have long since faded from the stone. They also show the garden that once surrounded the temple, filled with exotic trees and plants brought back from Punt. Advanced analysis of her mummy using modern medical technology continues to reveal new details about her life and death. Recent studies suggest she may have used a medicinal lotion containing cancer-causing ingredients, possibly contributing to her death from cancer. This discovery provides insight into ancient Egyptian medicine and the health challenges faced by the royal court. Experts now say that Hatshepsut may have laid the foundation for Egypt's wealth and power during Thutmose III's later military campaign. While he became known as Egypt's greatest military pharaoh, much of his success may have been possible because of the peace, prosperity and excellent administration she had created. Her reign provided the economic base and political stability that allowed him to finance his extensive military campaigns. Some scholars now argue she should be ranked among the greatest rulers in world history, not just as a woman but as a pharaoh in her own right. Her achievements in architecture, trade, diplomacy and administration rival those of any ancient ruler. She proved that effective leadership could take many forms, that peace could be more powerful than war, and that the divine right to rule wasn't limited by gender. The way we remember Hatshepsut today is completely different from how her own people were forced to forget her. She has gone from being erased and buried to being respected and studied. Schools teach her story, museums display her restored statue. Her temple still stands, rising from the cliffs, facing the Nile, a testament to her vision and determination. Despite the best efforts of those who tried to destroy her name, Hatshepsut survived, not in her own time, but in ours. Her buildings still speak of her greatness. Her statues, carefully restored, still command respect. Her story still inspires people around the world who face their own struggles against those who would silence them. She was a woman who ruled as a king, a daughter who became a god, a name that was broken but never truly lost. She proved that greatness doesn't come from power alone, it comes from vision, courage, and the ability to lead through wisdom rather than force. Her legacy reminds us that truth has a way of surfacing, even after thousands of years of burial. And now, after thousands of years of silence, Hatshepsut's voice is being heard again, stronger and clearer than ever before. She stands as proof that no amount of deliberate forgetting can erase genuine greatness, and that sometimes the most powerful victories are won not on battlefields, but in the quiet persistence of truth waiting to be rediscovered. If Hatshepsut's legacy inspired you, share this story and help bring her truth back into the light where it belongs.